place, are you able to share with others and with the greater Israeli public and the diaspora what it means for all of us to be able to remember and build memory to heal loss?
I think people want to connect, and it's particularly difficult for people who themselves have not experienced what we've experienced. Sometimes they distance themselves. I was actually speaking to a group of rabbis in Israel yesterday about this, about for some people we're turned into lepers and they distance themselves because they're nervous about the whole thing. And this is an opportunity for us to share with them what it feels for us and to help them understand a little bit about the pain of loss and living the rest of your life without an important family member not being part of all of your experiences. Today I was at the cemetery, obviously, with hundreds of thousands of Israelis as we stood by the graves of the fallen soldiers. And standing next to me was a man who is around 50 now with grown-up children. He served together with my son, Yonatan. And you ask yourself, I wonder what Yonatan would have been like at this stage in his life if he'd have carried on. But sharing our thoughts with each other and being able to express our feelings is, I think, a way of helping them also to connect with what we're going through, not this day only, but every day.
Absolutely. And sharing one another's stories makes it very real and brings it home to us. I know that you're involved in a future. You founded two communities in Israel, one in Renana and the other in Hod HaSharon, Kehilat Yonatan. Do you want to just very briefly talk about the hope that has given you and rebuilding in a physical and spiritual way?
When you go through what we have gone through and what many other Israeli families have gone through, you have two alternatives. You either shrink and hide behind some kind of a scream or go inside your own shell, or else you decide, no, we're living, we're going to carry on living, and we're going to make the best of the lives that we have and use them to contribute to our society. And so we established in Hod HaSharon Kehilat Yonatan in memory of Yonatan, our son. And that felt very good because it was like a positive thing that we could do. And to see the life of our congregation and the activities in which people are involved, in a sense, gives some kind of continuity to the life of Yonatan and the memory of Yonatan and of the kind of person that he was. So it's very important, I think, to be able to take one's loss and one's pain and the memory and use it in a way that contributes to our society, and in this case contributes towards the development of progressive Judaism in Israel. And many Israelis who have suffered loss like ourselves do use this opportunity to reach out and do something creative.
Absolutely. It's an amazing moment. And I have no doubt the way you speak about Yonatan, that he would have shared your passion for establishing progressive Judaism in Israel in the way that you have. On a slightly broader level, there is so much sadness and loss, and I think we can all feel it even through the screen in this strange world we live in. But there's hope for Israel and hope for the world we live in. Could you share with us some of your hope for Israel? And, with all the beautiful things we're celebrating here tonight comes this sort of big wish for an Israel that is all we have right now and all that we want it to be. Can you share some of your hopes with us?
I'm actually very positive about what Israel can become, because there are so many people in Israel that want this country to be a country that will embody the values that we believe in, a country that will be democratic, that will be pluralistic, that will be open. There's a lot of struggling along the way to reach that, but our hopes are for a better society, and we're very positive about that. Just to tell you a very brief personal story, in Hod HaSharon, we had to literally struggle against our former mayor and city hall in order to get land to build our own synagogue here. And it took 15 years to finally get a building permit, but we didn't let go This country exists because we never let go, and we move forward and we find a way forward. And at this point in time, God willing, having started to build a community center for our community, we will bring that to fulfillment. And that is part of the building of our society here in Israel.
Rabbi Mickey Boyden, it has been a real pleasure speaking to you tonight, and we really are honored that you have shared your story with us with such humility and kindness. And we hope to one day visit your community, to visit Kehilat Yonatan when it's a standing building, and bring our hopes and our spirits to the building. So thank you for sharing your story, for being part of the Hope of Israel, and for being part of the progressive project that is being built around you and in Israel.
It's been a great pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. Yom HaAtzmaut Sameach. I wish you all a happy Israel Independence Day.
And Chag Sameach to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now,
and from London, we offer words for Yom HaZikaron. Today, we turn our thoughts to the land of Israel, cradle of our faith, a land hallowed by memories of prophets and poets, mystics and sages and defenders of the land. In all the ages of our history and in all the places of our wanderings, we have remembered it with love and longing, saying with the psalmist, Im eshkachech Yerushalayim, tishkach yamini, tidbak lushoni lechiki im lo eskarechi. If I forget you, O Jerusalem, let my right hand wither, let my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth if I do not remember you, if I do not set Jerusalem above my highest joy. So now we're privileged to celebrate Israel's rebirth, but not before we recall with gratitude the vision of its pioneers, the devotion of its builders, and in particular tonight, the courage of its defenders. In the desolate spaces of a never-forgotten homeland, they built villages and towns, planted gardens, and established industries. We give thanks that out of the ashes of the death camps, there has arisen a symbol of renewal, a haven where broken lives have been made whole again, an affirmation of our people's fidelity to its past. And remembering all those who laid down their lives in honor of this land, we now have confidence in its future.
El Malech HaChamim shochen bamromim. Yizkor Am Yisrael. May the people of Israel throughout the world remember the souls of our brothers and sisters, members of the Israel Defense Forces, who fell in the wars of Israel at times of war and during the fulfillment of their duty to defend the land, including the souls of those who fought to establish the state of Israel and those who have been killed by acts of terrorism, all those who sacrificed their lives for the sanctification of God's name. With the help of God, they brought about the revival of the nation of Israel. They were quicker than eagles and stronger than lions as they volunteered to assist the nation, and their blood cries out from Israel's soil. The memory of their self-sacrifice and heroic deeds will never disappear from us. May their souls be bound in the bond of life, and may their names be remembered by their families, their fellow citizens of Israel, and the Jewish people. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi Rebecca Burke from the Liberal Conference of Rabbis and Cantors, and Rabbi Celia Sergey from the Assembly of Rabbis and Cantors from the Reform and Liberal movements. Graham, what's next on the agenda tonight?
So as I mentioned before, we have 4 dives into Israeli culture, and I'm delighted to introduce the first one. But first, we're going to be preceding these cultural interludes with some short words from rabbis from the progressive movement in Israel. So I'm delighted to first introduce Rabbi Tamir Nir. He is the rabbi of Chachva Bakem congregation in Jerusalem. His congregation is based all around ecological activity and the communal garden in the neighborhood where the congregation is located. Tamir was also a previous deputy mayor in Jerusalem. After we hear from Rabbi Tamir, we will hear some poetry from Rabbi Moshe Lavee.
My name is Tamir Nir, the rabbi of Chachva Bakem community here in Beit Kerem in Jerusalem. And that place, that community garden, is our synagogue. זה בית הכנסת שלנו. That's a place we gather. That's the place we meet each other. We meet nature. We meet God. That beautiful place is without fences. In the 73 Independence Day of Israel, I sending my prayer from this place that we will find the balance, the right balance between our passion, our wishes to change and to fix here in Israel or all over the world. As you can see, it's open for everybody. Everybody, whoever he is, can come and join us in Kabbalat Shabbat and in other events and prayers. That's a place we put the seeds with tears, zorim b'dma'ah, but not only that, we pick the fruit with a lot of joy, and that's a place where we, to our understanding, or that we can't fix everything, and the ability to enjoy the beautiful things that we already done and doing here in Israel, in the community in Jerusalem. That's how it goes in the Jewish. Renew not only the seeds or the plants, but ourselves too, and the beautiful culture that we have. In the 73 Independence Day of Israel, I wish and I pray for all of us to find the balance between our wishes to fix and change the world as we should the Jewish culture. That's a secret of Shabbat, who invite us to work 6 days a week and to rest in the 7th day and to enjoy whatever we have. Chag Atzmaut Sameach ולהתראות.
Okay. This week, we are celebrating the revival of the Jewish people in the land of Israel and remembering those who have fallen in the wars and conflicts. We are moving from sorrow to joy, remembering that joy emerges from sorrow and that sorrow is forever intertwined with joy. For me, at least, that ability extends to this connection with progressive Anglo-Jewry, the meeting of multiculturalism that is London, and the interfaith discourse. When I left Leo Baeck College, already more than a decade ago, I knew I want to bring to Israel some of the spirit of interfaith meeting. In recent years, I've been going with my students, Jews, Christians, and Muslims, to the JCM conference. If I hadn't experienced an iftar feast following one of these conferences, I probably could not see this girl in her moments of sorrow. We need you. We, those in Israel, need the different perspective that Jews from around the world can offer us. We need a model of mutual interaction in which not only the Israeli lecturer come with knowledge of Hebrew and Jewish culture into the British Jewish community, but also the British community offers a progressive perspective so valuable to the Israeli society. Allow me to conclude with words of hope for the possibility of reconciliation, of the meeting and cooperation between Israelis and Palestinians, the realization of which, I believe, is the only way we can reach true independence and freedom. In the winter, a couple of years ago, a brief bout of snow fell in the hills of Judea and Jerusalem. It was Friday night, and by the morning, like the manna in the desert, the snow had melted. When Shabbat was over, I looked for videos of the snow to see if it had indeed come to rest some on the ground. And all I found were video clips of young Palestinians laughing with joy in the snow in the early morning hours. And I wrote thus: השלג יכסה על הכל. שלג ירד בשבת, שלג ירד בחברון וחלחול ובית לחם, שלג ירד באפרת, מגדל עוז ובשורש, שלג לבן וצח, שלג רך, שלג זך, שלג מלהיב לבבות. שלג קל הוא היה, שכבה דקה, כמעט לא היו דיווחים. שלגי הגליל הכבדים לחדו עדשות מצלמות יהודים. כמעט ולא נודע השלג הזה, השלג שלא היה קל כצפוי בהרי המרכז, מרכז ישראל, מרכז פלסטין, מרכז יהודה ושומרון. יוטיוב פוצע את גבולות הכיבוש. יממה ומחצה במאוחר, אני מדפדף סרטונים פלסטינים. השלג מאחד לבבות. השלג כובש את פסגות הערים. השלג לוכד את דמעות הילדים. השלג מדלג כאילות השדה. השלג שר פזמוני שבת ומרטיט רמקולי מואזין. השלג מצהיל נערים ברחבת חרם השריף. בעין יוטיוב של שבת, מהצד השני של הכותל, הלב יודע, אותו השלג, הרקיד משכימי שחרית, מתפללי תפילת ותיקין. Now we can say, חג עצמאות שמח. Thank you.
Welcome back, and amazing, inspiring words from both Rabbi Tamir Nir and Rabbi Moshe Lavee. So, what's coming up? In a bit, I'm delighted to say that we will be making some cocktails. I understand the ingredients were sent out beforehand, and they might scroll up on a banner soon. So do remember to get your cocktail making ingredients ready. There they go. They're on the bottom of the screen now. And keep your comments coming in on social media. Bonus points for anyone who can guess, who can work out where this photo in my background is in Israel. We'd love to hear from you. But now it is my pleasure once again to introduce our next segment. We'll be hearing from, firstly, another rabbi from the progressive movement in Israel, Rabbi Ayala Meron. Rabbi Ayala Meron Shashoa she is a rabbi of Bevat Ayin, a congregation in Rosh Hayin in the center of Israel. And she also is a teacher in the Hebrew Union College. And after we hear from Rabbi Ayala, we'll be delving into some Hebrew language with the lovely Michal Shomer.
Hello everybody, my name is Ayala Meron. I'm a rabbi at Congregation Bevat Ayin in Rosh Hayin, Israel, and I want to share this thought with you today about one of the greatest miracles, in my opinion, of the Jewish state. I think it's the Hebrew language. I think the fact that a second or third grade child can go into the Israel Museum in Jerusalem and just open up the Dead Sea Scrolls that are dated 2,000 years ago and read from it and actually understand what it says, or at least try to understand what it says, is one of our greatest miracles. And talking about the Hebrew language, I want to relate to one of my favorite novels that was written here. It's by a writer named Meir Shalev. It's called A Pigeon and a Boy. It's telling the story about this homing pigeon, a pigeon that wherever you put her, she knows one thing. She knows how to go back home. She knows where it belongs. She knows that it is the urge that she has. And my blessing for the State of Israel this year, for Yom HaAtzmaut, would be that we would all know where home is. Home could be not only a place, it could be a letter, a word, or a story. And I think it's for us to realize that we're all telling in different languages, from different perspectives, the same story of the Jewish people. And we want to share it, and we want to live with it, and we want to pass it on to the next generation. Yom HaAtzmaut Sameach to all.
We can't really celebrate the founding of this modern state of Israel without also thinking about the revival of the Hebrew language. Historians suggest that the revival of the Hebrew language actually began on the 13th of October 1881, when Eliezer ben Yehuda and his friends agreed to exclusively speak Hebrew in their conversations. Ever since, Ivrit has evolved like other living languages. But it took almost another 140 years for new letters to be added to our ancient Hebrew alphabet. It is my pleasure to welcome today Michal Shomer, the creator of the multi-gendered Hebrew alphabet, to talk about this exciting new development. Most people here probably know that Hebrew is a gendered language consisting of two genders, male and female only. In English, it has become much more commonplace to avoid gendered language, and our movements have for many decades used prayer books with translations that avoid talking of God only in the masculine. However, in Hebrew, due to the nature of the language, it's quite tricky to avoid choosing a gender. Maybe you can share with us a little bit in general how the discussion around gendered language plays out in Israel today, and also talk a little bit about maybe some of the research.
Wherever we go, we see the masculine form. Studies show that the language is very important and has a great impact on how we understand the world, it has an impact on our perception.
So your project is really much greater than just a graphic design project, actually. It's really a project also about creating social change, which I think is why I find it so exciting. But let's talk a little bit about the work itself. Most people probably have not come across the multi-gendered Hebrew alphabet yet. So maybe you could tell us about how the project started and your goals with it.
The project started initially as my graduation project in university. I have a bachelor's degree in visual communication design. And multi-gender Hebrew is a new set of Hebrew letters facilitating multi-gender and inclusive reading and writing. Multi-gender Hebrew consists of 12 new characters, 11 letters, and one nikud sign, which I designed. And I designed them to be added to our alphabet. So I'm adding new letters to the Hebrew alphabet. And multi-gender Hebrew has two main goals. So the first goal is to make women present in the Hebrew language, because as we mentioned, the masculine form is what we see mostly in Hebrew. So I wanted to make more space and make the women present here in our language. And another important goal is to form a linguistic space for non-binary people, for non-binary identities, because in Hebrew we don't have the word they, for example. So addressing someone whose identity is not binary could be very struggling, very difficult in Hebrew.
So how has your work been received? What's been the reaction?
So there is a Facebook page for multi-gender Hebrew, and a few months ago I published the words welcome. In Hebrew it's two words, bruchim habaim, bruchot habaot, in the multi-gender Hebrew way. And I published this as files for free download. And a lot of people and organizations have downloaded them and used them. So, for example, the municipality of Gezer, private companies, schools, and in the Knesset of Israel. And this was just the first step. So about a month ago, I released a full version of multigender Hebrew for download. So it's been only a month, and I've seen so many examples of people using the new letters in their personal text, in documents, in exams for kids. Some teachers started to use that. So it's really amazing and exciting. People are waiting for a change, I think, in Hebrew. People were waiting for something because our language, our beautiful language that I really love, the language puts some challenges in front of us. Our society has to be able to express the values and core values that surround us, that are important to all of us, like gender equality and being inclusive for all people. Multigender Hebrew is one solution to the challenges we have in the Hebrew language. The most important thing for me is that we find and that we utilize and use solutions in general. It doesn't have to be multigender Hebrew, but we have to understand that the language is super important and it forms our minds, and we have to make sure that we use any of the existing solutions, or we make up some new solutions to really include everyone and use the language in a way that promotes gender equality.
Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you especially for giving us these exciting new letters so that we can realize a contemporary take on the Hebrew language and also participate in the act of tikkun, of repairing the world, of bringing a little bit more equality and justice into the world by using it. Thank you for being with us.
I think my co-host will be back with us very soon. But in the meantime, moving into the next segment where poetry and language combine so beautifully to think about music. And we are all connected in so many ways through the music from Israel, through our liturgy. It goes back. We have a new language that we're talking about in terms of Hebrew, and the music goes back thousands and thousands of years, but it connects us. And in many ways, picking up on what we see, a new language evolving, our music, our Jewish music is also evolving. And last week I recorded an interview with Rabbi Esteban Gottfried from Beit Tfila Israeli. So if you've been to the port and attended the services of Beit Tfila at the port in Tel Aviv, Rabbi Esteban is the director and rabbi of that community. And I recorded this incredible interview with him. Just before we move on to that interview, I just wanted to remind everybody, after this session, there's a song session with our cantors and rabbis from the Reform and Liberal movements. You'll need to move over to Zoom for that session. So please watch in the scrolling below for the Zoom link. If you haven't got it from your community newsletters or the movement newsletters, don't forget to join us. That will happen around 8 o'clock. But now, please join us as I speak to Rabbi Esteban about the emergence of new music out of Beit Tfila Israeli.
Shalom, Yom HaAtzmaut Sameach to all our friends and supporters in Artzenu. My name is Rabbi Mira Chovav of Ramot Shalom Congregation of Be'er Sheva, and I'm delighted and honored to deliver this short Yom HaAtzmaut greeting on behalf of our board and members. With your permission, I would like to do so through an Israeli song, which in Be'er Sheva, in Ramot Shalom, we very much love. It's called Tzel Umei Be'er, Shadow and Well Water, and it reflects the childhood memories of its lyricist, Yoram Taharlev, who grew up in Kibbutz Yagur, south to Haifa, in the 1940s. During those years, Jewish refugees were trying to illegally board on the shores of Israel, while kibbutz members would help them somehow escape the British authorities, gave those Zionist Holocaust survivors the typical kibbutznik clothes and tried to sort of make them invisible or inseparable from other kibbutz members. The song says, Mi shera'ev yimtza etzlenu pat shel lechem. Here, whoever is hungry will find a piece of bread. Here, whoever is tired will find shade and fresh well water. One whose sukkah has fallen may silently enter through the door and may stay forever. The very last words of the songs are, V'hashar shuv lo yisager, may the gate never close again. So our wish and greeting to the State of Israel on its 73rd year is that in the spirit of this song, our gates will always be open to welcome the stranger, to welcome each and every one of you, and to make sure that everybody can get here at least tzel umei be'er, shade and fresh well water, and hopefully much more than that. Wishing you all Yom HaAtzmaut Sameach, and praying for better times when we can actually meet in person. Lashana הבאה בבאר שבע. להתראות.
We're just taking a moment to go back and thank Rabbi Michael and the many rabbis from the Israel movement who've been with us tonight. Rabbi Michael has spoken about music in her community, and we know that across our progressive and across communities in Israel and around the world, there is music evolving and music helping us learn and connect with one another and with our communities.
שפתי תפתח ופי יגיד תהילתך אדוני שפתי
Rabbi Esteban, that music that we've just heard is very familiar to many of the people on the screen here today. There are melodies that we're singing in our synagogues in London, around the world, and particularly we know they're being sung in Beit Tfila Israeli. Before we start, can I just introduce you to everyone on the screen? Rabbi Esteban Gottfried is the rabbi and co-founder and director of Beit Tfila Israeli. Rabbi Esteban was ordained at Hebrew Union College in Jerusalem and is a graduate of the Shalom Hartman Institute. I wondered if you could just tell us how Beit Tfila Israeli came to be.
Hi, Noreen, everybody. Hi to everybody. Chag Sameach. And thank you for having us, having me here in this conversation. Beit Tfila Israeli, it was a need. It came from a need, especially from a personal need for me and the other small group of people that we got together and we said that something was missing. We started as a chabura, we were like 20 people, and very, very fast became something that people hear about this and hear that something new is happening in Tel Aviv. We did the first Kabbalah at the port of Tel Aviv with the Mediterranean, in the sunset, in a beautiful, beautiful place. So since then, every summer, we do our Shabbat services at the port of Tel Aviv with between 800 and 1,000 people every Shabbat.
An amazing story. And out of that, you've created this fusion of contemporary Israeli culture and Jewish tradition, and you've brought it into the public sphere. Can you talk a little bit about what the impact of that has been on a liberal, progressive Jewish liturgy and that kind of different identity for Israelis.
That's what we do. That's our Judaism. That's our way to celebrate Shabbat and holidays, and it's okay to do it in the most beautiful and center place of Tel Aviv. I don't see if you can see, but for every page with traditional prayer, we have Israeli contemporary or not only Israeli poetry and songs that say that are in dialogue with the tradition. And this concept of bringing Israeli poetry, Israeli songs, Israeli classics, and make them holy, make them part of the Israeli, of our liturgy. It's also a kind of a revolutionary step that we did here. This music that I hear in the radio, this text that I heard at home with my grandpa, and everything put together, it's like I'm welcome. I have a place here. But the music here serves the purpose of having a meaningful tefillah. A good way to present Beit Tfila, where the spirituality and religion and art are working together.
Is an incredible way for Israelis to deepen their Jewish identity. And I think when it started, it feels like it was an outlier, and today it's become the norm, and that is really incredible. And we're grateful to you for that. One of the clips we looked at was how you have taken that little step further and added a blues twist to Oseh Shalom. What was the inspiration for that?
I must say that I heard it in some place, and I didn't remember where. And I said, hey, that's beautiful. And then I brought what I remember by heart to the musicians, and they just bring it up. And then we saw that it comes from the film Mo Meters Blue. You know, from the beginning, our motto was Na'aseh v'nish'al. We'll do, and then we ask the questions. So we try many things. And when we try things and you feel that it worked for you and for the people who are doing it, that's the only thing that matters. And that's how we got to this Oseh Shalom and Adonai Sfatai Tiftach.
That is wonderful. And we know innovation comes from experimentation, trying things, and communities who do that are communities who innovate. And you have certainly led the way in innovation in Israel. Knowing that today we are celebrating Yom HaAtzmaut, Israel's 73rd anniversary or birthday. So as Israel goes into its 74th year, what are your hopes for Israel?
It's being inclusive, and it's being accepting and tolerant, and handing the hand to other non-Jews and the minorities that they live here. And I think that this fight of what will be the future of Israeli Judaism, it's the most important fight of Israel today.
Thank you, Rabbi Esteban, for being part of that project to build a better Israel for everyone. You know, democracy, inclusion, these are the values that you bring to your Judaism. So please continue with Beit Tfila Israeli to innovate and to be intentional and to be Jewish in a public space. Thank you so much. And
thank you.
Chag Sameach to you.
Chag Sameach.
Aha! My co-host is back, and welcome, Graham. And that was just a little bit of music to get everybody in the mood for our comsets, which will start probably just at 8 o'clock. Graham, I know you spoke to the people from Milk and Honey about whiskey and their distillery. You want to tell us a little bit about it? I bought my whiskey too. I'm not normally a whiskey drinker, but here I am.
So this definitely is a L'chaim moment. We want to thank everybody for coming. It's amazing to see all the comments on all the different streams from all the people who are watching this all over Israel, all over the UK, and even some other places in the world, and across both the liberal and reform movements. It's really, really great. Congratulations to Hillary Peer and, of course, Rabbi Leah Mushtin, who correctly guessed my picture is Kikar Rabin in Tel Aviv. Yeah, I mean, so I have had the privilege last week of chatting to the Milk and Honey Distillery, which is the only, I think it's the only whiskey distillery that is actually brewing whiskey on the ground in Israel. I had this mystical vision that it was up in the hills of Galilee using the water from the Knesset, but it's actually in the middle of Tel Aviv. We're going to hear more all about that. But Nolene, what do you know what whiskey you're drinking?
I'm drinking a Belveni, and my husband and my son won't be happy with me, but it tastes all right for a non-whiskey drinker. I think it's okay. I think we just need to check that everybody has their cocktail ingredients ready, because you got to join in and make a cocktail and let us know in the chat how it tastes, whatever whiskey you're using.
Absolutely. So really excited for this conversation with Milk and Honey. But first, we're going to hear from our final rabbi from the progressive movement in Israel. So I'm delighted to introduce Rabbi Yaya Tobias. He is the rabbi in the Knesset region and of all the kibbutzim in that area. He was raised on kibbutz Yahel, and I'm delighted to hear from him now.
Graham, can I just...
My name is Yaya Tobias. I'm rabbi of Kehilat Yama, a Jewish initiative in Sovev Kinneret area. I would like to share a thought about wine. How awesome is wine? Wine is the greatest drink that I could think of. And it's in the sages say that wine brings out joy. But wine is also what we do when we want to elevate a moment. And in that sense, drinking wine is all about taking a moment in time and elevating it and making it a celebration. So as we celebrate the state of Israel and we celebrate our joint efforts to make this place a better place, let us raise a glass of wine and drink it for the elevation of this moment and the elevation of this celebration and the elevation of this country and people of Israel. May we make this a better place for all of us and for the future. Lots of love to everyone, and Yom HaAtzmaut Sameach.
Hi, Tal.
Hello,
and welcome viewers to the M&H Distillery in Tel Aviv. We're really excited to meet Tal today. And yeah, Tal, my first question for you is, what is M&H?
M&H, first of all, stands for Milk and Honey, because we are from the land of milk and honey. For a whiskey brand, it's not the best name sometimes because it's two food ingredients, which you're talking about another food ingredient. So we decided to go with M&H. So yeah, we are a single malt distillery situated in Tel Aviv, in the southern part of Tel Aviv, between Tel Aviv and Jaffa. And the story actually began in 2012 from a group of friends, entrepreneurs that came from the high tech, but fell in love with whiskey because it's something you can actually hold in your hand and not only write it. And they just fell in love with whiskey and decided to be the pioneers and to open the first ever single malt whiskey distillery here in Tel Aviv.
So tell us about the whiskey. So what products has M&H come up with?
So we are making only single malt. So we are distilling only barley, malted barley, that stands for the single malt. We source the barley from the UK because our country, as you know, it's too hot, and our barley is not good enough. Doesn't have enough starch or sugars in it, and more fibers inside. When we put it in our casks, unlike the distilleries in Scotland, which they say their whiskey is resting or the casks are sleeping, this is the Middle East. No one's sleeping, and of course in Tel Aviv. So the casks are working because of the climate. So we need a very high, very clean new make. And the casks are actually working here in this kind of climate, the hot and humid climate of Tel Aviv. So it's a very fast maturation comparing to cold countries. For us, in 3 years, you're going to get a very mature whiskey. Most of the casks we have here are ex-bourbon. That means that it's not. We're using a second fill or a first fill after it was a bourbon cask, white oak from Kentucky.
Tell us a bit more about how the whiskey tastes. Like, how would you describe your whiskey?
So I think if we're talking about the classic, which is our opening version, our opening expression, it's mostly ex-bourbon cask and then some red wine cask and a drop of virgin oak, a new oak, because here in our climate, virgin oak tend to be over oaky. And the whiskey is first of all, it's kind of oily texture in the upper part of your palate, and then very sweet and gentle vanilla, some nutty and some fruitiness from the wine casks. And this combination, it's around 3.5 years old. And from time to time, we're going to have some crazy expressions like the pomegranate wine casks or some casks we are actually aging at the Dead Sea, which is the lowest place in the world. And we are the only one that can actually do it.
I can't wait to try some. I only wish there wasn't a pandemic that meant I was actually in the room with you and able to sample the whiskeys. And
in Israel, it's over. In Israel, it's over.
I know. Why Tel Aviv? Why is M&H based in Tel Aviv? But then also, why what does it say that Israel now has its own whiskey, right? Yom HaAtzmaut. What's Israeli about this?
First of all, I think the whole idea is Israeli because I think it was impossible to open a whiskey distillery in Israel. But if you want an Israeli to do something, you have to tell him it's impossible. And the second thing, I think, it's our innovation. So we are playing by the Scottish regulations with double distillation of malted barley. But I think if you add our, hectic way of thinking, the Israeli hectic way of thinking, so this is where you get all kinds of crazy ideas like the Dead Sea or Jerusalem mountains or stuff like that.
Perfect.
The second thing is why Tel Aviv? If you're from Tel Aviv, this is the capital. If you're from Jerusalem, it's a different kind of thing. Everything happens here. You know that. Tel Aviv is the most liberal city, night scene, bar life, and everything here. And I think most of the tourists first come here, and then of course they go to Jerusalem. And I think we are from Tel Aviv, and if you think very fast, if you think outside the box, you're Tel Avivian. And I think even the name Tel Aviv, it's something that resembles our way of thinking. Traditional way of whiskey making with very new ideas.
Absolutely, and the word whiskey, I think, comes from the Gaelic for water of life, right? Yeah. So like Chaim, Mayim, there's some amazing play on words here.
Yeah,
Tel Aviv, Chaim, Mayim, maybe another whiskey of yours in the future can own that. And finally, how do you recommend drinking the whiskey?
So for me, just like that.
Perfect. Me too.
For me, the best cocktail is 2 ingredients. One of them is a glass. But if we're going to make a cocktail, so let's do a whiskey sour with a little twist. So we start with 1.5 ounce or 45 milliliters of our classic M&H single malt whiskey. And a sweet and sour. Sweet and sour, it's the same ratios between simple syrup, which is sugar water, and lemon juice. The same, 45. And then I'm taking few thyme branches, just crush them a little bit and put them in. Ice. Yeah, just shake it a little bit. Come on, I'm gonna strain it into a whiskey glass, an old-fashioned glass. It's so hot, I'm gonna add some more ice in it. Another fresh thyme and a slice of lemon, and we are ready to go. L'chaim. Cheers.
L'chaim. Thank you, Tal.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cantor Tamara Wolfson. This is Rabbi Anna Posner.
Hello.
And having celebrated 74 years of Israeli innovation and beauty, we invite you to stand with us and to sing the Hatikva, the Israeli national anthem, with us at this time. Kol od halev ha'ima, nefesh yehudi ulfatei mizrach kadima, ayin lezion sofia. Od lo avta tikvateinu, hatikva bashnot alpayim, liotam chofshi be'atzeinu, Eretz Zion Yerushalayim. Liotam chofshi be'atzeinu, Eretz Zion Yerushalayim.
And Rabbi Anna Posner. The sun has set here in London, and I know it's been set for a while in Israel. So our program has come to an end, but we are running slightly over, but we are never running too late to say some really important thank yous. So I just want to thank first and foremost our colleagues in the Reform and Liberal movements for working so brilliantly together to put tonight's program on. Rabbis, professionals, and lay people. It's been really fantastic. I also wanted to thank Rabbi Michael Boyden for sharing his really incredible story with us and all his hope, and to everyone else who shared their stories in those vignettes this evening. Also to the rabbis from the Israeli Movement for Progressive Judaism. It was wonderful to meet rabbis from more remote communities who are doing such incredible work in Israel, building our progressive movement. I also wanted to thank the tech team who have kept us on track, took Graham out, brought him back in again, but they've been really brilliant tonight, and it takes a huge amount of work to do this, and I'm really cognizant now of just how much, so thank you very much to them. And to the rabbis and cantors, or to the cantors and musicians and rabbis who are going to be doing the song session, the kumsitz, in a few minutes, and the Zoom link has come through. A pre-thank you to them, and join in with them and celebrate all that is our movement and our music and Israel on her 73rd birthday. Graham.
And I have the absolute privilege of thanking Minister for Knesset, Rabbi Gilad Kariv. We wish you b'hatzlacha in all your work in the new government, and thanking all of the liberal and reform movements, partner organizations in work of all sorts in Israel. We are thinking of you at this time, and also thanking everyone for watching tonight, wherever you are, in the UK, in Israel, and around the world. And finally, thanking Nolene, my co-host. Yom HaAtzmaut Sameach. Toda Rabah, everybody, and wishing you a lovely evening.
Thank you, Graham. Chag Sameach, everyone.